"She's just a supply sergeant," Staff Sergeant Reeves muttered when 27-year-old Sergeant Thalia Brennan volunteered for the dangerous Convoy mission to forward operating Base Serpent. What he didn't know was that those infantry-trained eyes could calculate bullet trajectories and ammunition counts in seconds, and that logistics mind would orchestrate the most brilliant defensive strategy his platoon had ever witnessed. Sergeant Thalia Brennan checked her clipboard one final time as she supervised the loading of supply trucks at Camp Liberty in Iraq's volatile Anbar province. At 27, she moved through the motor pool with the methodical precision that had earned her recognition as the most efficient supply non-commissioned officer in the 3rd Infantry Division. The other soldiers barely acknowledged her presence as she verified manifests and secured equipment. To them, she was just another rear echelon support soldier, someone who counted beans and ordered toilet paper, while the real warriors handled combat operations. Her slight frame and wire-rimmed glasses reinforced their assumptions about what a supply sergeant should look like, but Thalia had volunteered for convoy duty specifically, requesting assignment to the most dangerous supply routes in Iraq. Her personnel file showed standard qualifications for a 92Y supply specialist, with commendations for maintaining perfect inventory accuracy and streamlined requisition processes. What it didn't reveal was the tactical mind that approached every problem like a complex logistics puzzle requiring creative solutions. The base hummed with pre-deployment activity as her convoy prepared for the treacherous journey to forward operating Base Serpent, a remote outpost that hadn't received supplies in 6 days due to increased insurgent activity along Highway 1. If you want to hear more incredible stories of veterans who exceeded everyone's expectations, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Because we share these inspiring stories every week, Thalia's exceptional tactical thinking wasn't born in military schools. It was forged during her childhood in Detroit, where her father ran a small construction company that competed against major contractors for city projects. Marcus Brennan had taught his daughter that success came from understanding every variable in a complex system and finding advantages others missed. While other teenagers focused on social media, 15-year-old Thalia spent afternoons at construction sites learning how her father coordinated dozens of workers, managed material deliveries, and solved problems that could shut down entire projects. She discovered that logistics was essentially three-dimensional chess played with real consequences, where one miscalculation could cost thousands of dollars and weeks of delays. Her father had served 2 tours in Vietnam as an infantry sergeant, and he recognized tactical thinking when he saw it. He taught Thalia to read terrain like blueprints, understanding how geography affected movement and positioning. They played strategy games where she had to solve supply problems under artificial constraints, developing her ability to see patterns and calculate optimal solutions under pressure. When budget cuts forced her father to close his business, Thalia enlisted in the army specifically to become a supply specialist. She excelled in every logistics course, earning top scores in inventory management and resource allocation. But her instructors focused only on her technical competence, never recognizing that she approached supply operations with the strategic mindset of someone who understood how materials and movement determined the outcome of complex operations. Her motivation was straightforward. Her father had taught her that professionals took pride in solving impossible problems, and she intended to prove that supply sergeants could be as tactically valuable as any combat soldier. The dismissive attitude became obvious during convoy briefings when Staff Sergeant James Reeves outlined their mission to resupply forward operating Base Serpent through insurgent-controlled territory. As the squad discussed route security and defensive positions, Thalia quietly suggested they alter their standard formation and timing based on recent attack patterns she had analyzed. Reeves's response was immediate and cutting. He told the group that Sergeant Brennan was obviously unfamiliar with convoy security procedures and should focus on her inventory sheets rather than tactical operations. Several soldiers smirked, and Specialist Davidson made a comment about supply clerks thinking they understood combat because they watched too many war movies. The skepticism intensified when Thalia requested permission to review intelligence reports about recent ambush locations. She had identified patterns in insurgent attack timing and positioning that suggested they could avoid confrontation entirely by adjusting their departure schedule and route selection. Reeves refused, explaining that logistics personnel didn't have the training to interpret tactical intelligence and shouldn't waste time trying to second-guess experienced infantry soldiers. When Thalia tried to explain her analysis of ammunition consumption rates and suggested they redistribute heavy weapons between vehicles for better defensive coverage, Sergeant First Class Morrison interrupted her. He pointed out that she had never been in actual combat and shouldn't try to redesign Convoy procedures that had been developed by soldiers. With multiple combat deployments, the final dismissal came when Thalia asked about communication protocols during potential contact. Davidson openly laughed, asking if she planned to coordinate artillery strikes using her supply radio. Reeves told her to concentrate on protecting her precious clipboards and leave the real soldiering to people who knew what they were doing. The message was unmistakable. She was just support personnel who would probably panic when bullets started flying. That evening, Thalia sat in her quarters, studying maps and intelligence summaries with the same methodical attention her father had taught her to apply to construction contracts. The familiar analytical process helped her process the day's humiliation and focus on what really mattered. She spread route maps across her desk, marking every reported ambush location from the past 3 months and calculating patterns that revealed insurgent tactical preferences. The data showed clear trends in timing, positioning, and target selection that could be predicted and avoided through careful planning. The rejection hurt more than she had expected. She had hoped her preparation and analytical approach would demonstrate her value to the team, but she realized these soldiers saw only what they expected to see, a female supply sergeant who looked nothing like their idea of a combat soldier. Their dismissal wasn't personal hostility. It was ingrained assumptions about who belonged in their world and who could contribute meaningful tactical insights. Lying in her narrow bunk, Thalia thought about every complex logistics challenge she had solved in her father's construction business. She remembered coordinating material deliveries to 17 different job sites while managing workforce scheduling and equipment maintenance. She recalled the housing project where her supply chain management had saved the company from bankruptcy when material shortages threatened to shut down construction. These memories didn't generate anger, but quiet determination. She understood her capabilities better than anyone in her unit, and she knew that proving herself would require perfect execution when the critical moment arrived. Her father had taught her that professionals demonstrated competence through results, not arguments. The convoy departed Camp Liberty at 0430 hours, following Highway 1 toward forward operating Base Serpent through territory that had seen increased insurgent activity. Thalia rode in the third vehicle, surrounded by supply pallets and ammunition cases, while monitoring radio communications from multiple units in the area. 20 minutes into their journey, she noticed troubling patterns that others had missed. Radio chatter indicated unusual civilian vehicle movement around known ambush sites, and overhead surveillance had spotted motorcycles shadowing their route from parallel roads. The intelligence suggested coordinated insurgent activity, but when she tried to share her observations with Reeves, he reminded her that tactical analysis was not her responsibility. Her concerns deepened when she plotted their current position against recent attack data. Every indicator suggested they were driving directly into a prepared ambush zone, but her warnings were dismissed as nervousness from someone who had never experienced real combat operations. 47 minutes into their mission, the convoy entered a narrow valley where Highway 1 curved between steep hills covered with rocks and sparse vegetation. Thalia's tactical analysis had identified this location as a perfect ambush site, but convoy protocols required them to maintain speed and spacing rather than alter their route through verified dangerous terrain. She was reviewing ammunition manifests when the first rocket-propelled grenade struck the lead vehicle, immediately followed by intense automatic weapons fire from elevated positions on both sides of the highway. Within seconds, the convoy was trapped in a coordinated ambush with multiple casualties and no obvious escape route. Reeves attempted to coordinate defensive positions while calling for air support, but the tactical situation deteriorated rapidly. 2 vehicles were disabled, several soldiers were wounded, and insurgent fire was so accurate it seemed like they had been studying convoy procedures for weeks. Standard military doctrine called for establishing defensive positions and waiting for reinforcement. But Thalia realized that conventional tactics would result in catastrophic losses before help could arrive. Thalia's transformation began with mathematical precision that stunned everyone around her. While other soldiers sought cover, she calmly analyzed the ambush pattern and began issuing tactical instructions based on her supply inventory knowledge and terrain assessment. Her first breakthrough came from understanding ammunition logistics better than anyone else in the convoy. She calculated exactly how much heavy weapons fire the insurgents could sustain based on typical ammunition loads, and determined they were trying to force a prolonged engagement that would exhaust American resources. Instead, she coordinated an ammunition redistribution that concentrated their heaviest firepower into 3-minute bursts designed to overwhelm specific insurgent positions. Working from her position in the supply vehicle, Thalia used her inventory radio to coordinate between disabled vehicles, creating a communication network that allowed wounded soldiers to provide targeting information for functional heavy weapon systems. Her supply logistics expertise translated directly into tactical coordination, as she tracked ammunition consumption and redistributed resources to maintain optimal firepower positioning. But her most brilliant moment came when she recognized that the insurgents had positioned themselves based on standard convoy defensive procedures. Using her understanding of terrain and movement patterns, she coordinated a flanking maneuver that used supply vehicles as mobile weapons platforms. Rather than static defensive positions, she directed drivers to execute precise movements that created overlapping fields of fire while using natural terrain. Features her father had taught her to read, like construction blueprints. Her voice remained calm and precise as she coordinated ammunition resupply, casualty evacuation, and tactical positioning simultaneously. For 38 minutes, while the ambush raged around them, Thalia essentially commanded the entire convoy defense. She calculated bullet trajectories, managed resource allocation, and coordinated tactical movements that turned a potential massacre into a tactical victory. Her supply sergeant training had prepared her to manage complex logistics under pressure, and she applied those same skills to managing a combat operation with deadly precision. When reinforcements arrived 40 minutes later, they found the convoy had not only survived the ambush, but had eliminated or scattered the entire insurgent force. The after-action reports documented tactical coordination and resource management that exceeded expectations for even experienced infantry units. Back at Camp Liberty, Thalia's actions became the subject of intense analysis among tactical officers and logistics commanders. Her integration of supply chain management principles with combat operations had created new approaches to convoy defense that were immediately incorporated into training programs throughout the theater. Staff Sergeant Reeves sought her out 3 days later, his earlier dismissal replaced by genuine respect and curiosity about her methods. He admitted that he had never seen tactical thinking like hers and requested that she be promoted to convoy operations coordinator for future high-risk missions. The same soldiers who had mocked her competence now sought her advice on tactical planning and resource management. The broader impact extended throughout the division. Logistics officers began studying her techniques, recognizing that supply chain expertise could enhance tactical operations in ways that traditional military education had never considered. Her approach to treating combat operations as complex logistics problems created new protocols that improved survival rates across multiple units. 8 months later, Thalia received the Bronze Star for exceptional tactical leadership under fire. But the recognition she valued most came from Davidson, who credited her coordination with saving his life, and Morrison, who incorporated her analytical methods into his own tactical planning. They understood that they owed their survival to a supply sergeant, who had been dismissed as just another rear-echelon support soldier. The soldiers, who had served under her command, never again questioned the tactical value of professionals who approached problems from unconventional perspectives. Thalia's father would have been proud to know that his lessons about seeing patterns and solving complex problems had saved an entire convoy that might otherwise have become casualties of both enemy action and tactical limitations.